Imagine writing your deepest, darkest secret on a piece of notebook paper, and then being forcefully required to read it aloud to 10 million highly judgmental strangers. For a painfully shy teenager currently battling severe, crippling social anxiety, that scenario sounds like an absolute, inescapable literal nightmare. But for 15-year-old Sophie Pecora, doing exactly that did not destroy her. It completely and permanently revolutionized her entire existence. This is the incredible, heavily guarded, untold story of a single, desperate cry for help written in the absolute isolation of a childhood bedroom. We are going to explore exactly how one highly specific sequence of words completely shattered the manipulative reality television machine, organically sparked a massive global movement, and changed her life forever. Long before the blinding multi-million-dollar stage lights, the deafening roar of the auditorium, and the falling golden confetti, there was only a terrifying, suffocating silence. For young Sophie Pecora, the daily experience of walking through the crowded hallways of her middle school was an absolute psychological nightmare. She was the ultimate outsider, a deeply sensitive introvert trapped in an incredibly unforgiving social ecosystem, where any perceived difference was aggressively targeted and ruthlessly punished. While other teenagers were seamlessly navigating the complex social hierarchies, forming tight-knit cliques, and completely dominating the chaotic environment, Sophie felt entirely invisible, completely disconnected from the world rapidly moving around her. To cope with the agonizing, paralyzing weight of this severe social anxiety, she desperately sought refuge in the only place that felt genuinely safe, the absolute isolation of her childhood bedroom. Behind a firmly closed door, completely shielded from the judging eyes of her peers, she found an unexpected, highly powerful sanctuary in the form of a cheap acoustic guitar and a simple notebook. She did not pick up this instrument with grand, manufactured aspirations of becoming a wealthy mainstream pop star or dominating the global Billboard charts. She picked it up because she was literally drowning in her own unexpressed emotions, and songwriting became her sole, desperate lifeline. In the quiet darkness of that room, she began to slowly translate her profound psychological pain into a raw, unfiltered musical language, completely unaware that this deeply personal coping mechanism was quietly laying the foundation for a massive, unprecedented global empire. The true, undeniable turning point in this incredible psychological journey arrived with the creation of a deeply specific, devastatingly honest piece of music. Sitting alone on her bedroom floor, overwhelmed by the toxic venom of relentless cyberbullying and the crushing feeling of ultimate social isolation, she began to write a song that completely bypassed all the traditional, highly sanitized rules of commercial pop music. She titled it 7th Grade. This was not a generic, universally appealing anthem filled with vague, uplifting metaphors carefully designed by corporate songwriters to maximize radio airplay. Instead, it was a brutal, highly literal diary entry. She weaponized her own agonizing experiences, meticulously documenting the exact, terrifying feeling of being called annoying, the desperate, unfulfilled desire simply to be noticed, and the heavy, exhausting reality of pretending to be okay when you are completely breaking down inside. Every single word was heavily drenched in authentic, unresolved teenage trauma. The spoken word delivery she developed was incredibly raw, resembling a frantic, emotional confession rather than a traditional melodic performance. By completely refusing to sugarcoat her agonizing reality, she successfully captured the exact, terrifying essence of what it actually feels like to be a completely misunderstood outcast in the modern, hyperconnected digital age. She poured every ounce of her internal suffering into those lyrics, essentially creating a devastatingly accurate psychological mirror that would soon reflect the silent, deeply hidden pain of millions of marginalized teenagers completely across the globe. Creating the song was a massive emotional release, but the decision to actually expose this deeply personal vulnerability to the unforgiving digital world required an unimaginable level of absolute sheer bravery. For someone battling crippling social anxiety, the internet can represent the ultimate, terrifying battlefield, a highly toxic landscape filled with anonymous trolls and cynical critics ready to tear you apart. Yet, driven by a desperate, overwhelming need to establish a genuine human connection, she placed a simple digital camera in her bedroom, pressed the record button, and uploaded her raw, unpolished performance to YouTube. There was absolutely no massive corporate marketing budget pushing the video, no highly choreographed background dancers, and no expensive studio lighting designed to manufacture a fake, flawless image. It was just a fragile, deeply nervous teenager staring directly into a camera lens, offering her bleeding heart to the absolute unknown. In the heavily curated, profoundly artificial world of social media, where millions of users desperately project fake, flawless lifestyles, her brutal honesty acted as a massive, uncontrollable shockwave. It was an incredibly dangerous psychological gamble. She was completely exposing her deepest, darkest insecurities to the very same digital environment that had previously caused her so much immense pain. But this profound act of digital bravery was the necessary, critical catalyst. By throwing her raw, unfiltered truth into the vast, unpredictable ocean of the internet, she quietly initiated a massive chain reaction that would forever alter the fundamental trajectory of her entire life. The immediate reaction to that deeply personal video completely defied all traditional, heavily calculated algorithms of the modern music industry. It did not just go viral in the superficial, fleeting sense of standard internet trends. It deeply, profoundly resonated on a massive psychological level. Within a matter of days, the incredibly raw, spoken-word confession began to rapidly spread across the digital landscape, aggressively cutting through the immense noise of heavily manufactured online content. Thousands of deeply emotional comments began flooding her notification feed. Teenagers from entirely different continents, navigating their own terrifying versions of social isolation, began reaching out in massive droves to desperately express how perfectly she had articulated their own silent, hidden agony. They completely recognized themselves in her trembling voice and her devastatingly literal lyrics. The song rapidly transformed from a quiet, deeply personal coping mechanism into a massive, undeniable generational anthem for the outcasts, the misfits, and the utterly misunderstood. This explosive, entirely organic grassroots momentum immediately caught the highly predatory attention of the massive entertainment machine. The traditional gatekeepers of reality television, constantly desperately searching for highly engaging, deeply emotional narratives to exploit for lucrative advertising revenue, recognized an absolute goldmine in her organic digital rise. The quiet sanctuary of her childhood bedroom had officially been permanently breached, entirely paving the way for the ultimate, terrifying test of her incredible psychological resilience. When the massive corporate producers behind America's Got Talent finally reached out to secure her for a televised audition, the stakes of her entire existence were instantly, permanently elevated. This was no longer just a safe, highly controlled digital environment where she could easily hide behind a computer screen. This was an invitation to step into the most intimidating, heavily scrutinized entertainment arena on the entire planet. For a young, highly sensitive introvert, agreeing to explicitly perform her deepest, most painful insecurities on global television in front of millions of highly judgmental viewers is a terrifying, almost insurmountable proposition. The reality television machine is notoriously ruthless, aggressively designed to chew up raw human emotion, package it into easily digestible viral segments, and completely discard the fragile individuals the very second the television ratings begin to inevitably drop. Despite the absolute, paralyzing terror that gripped her, she made the incredibly brave, highly calculated decision to step directly into the roaring fire. She inherently understood that the massive television platform could fundamentally amplify her urgent message of radical empathy to a scale that was completely impossible to achieve entirely on her own. She was not walking into that terrifying audition hopping to become a heavily sanitized, manufactured pop star. She was bravely walking in to become a fiercely authentic, highly visible representative for every single teenager who had ever been mercilessly bullied into absolute, suffocating silence. The actual physical reality of walking onto that massive television stage was an absolute, overwhelming sensory nightmare. As she nervously stood in the wings, waiting for her specific cue to walk out into the blinding, multi-million-dollar lighting rigs, the sheer, crushing weight of her severe social anxiety threatened to completely paralyze her. When her name was finally announced, every single step she took toward the center mark felt like walking completely barefoot through a terrifying psychological minefield. The massive, chaotic auditorium was filled with thousands of expectant faces, and seated directly in front of her were four of the most influential, notoriously critical judges in the entire mainstream entertainment industry. Millions of viewers completely witnessed the raw, unfiltered terror physically manifesting in her deeply trembling hands as she desperately gripped her acoustic guitar. In the highly polished, fiercely competitive world of reality television, where absolute, unwavering confidence is practically a mandatory requirement for survival, her visible, extreme fragility was incredibly shocking. She looked like she was completely on the verge of a massive panic attack, completely ready to shatter into a million tiny pieces right there on the global broadcast. But this intense, completely unscripted display of raw human vulnerability was precisely what made the impending moment so incredibly powerful. The global audience was not simply watching a calculated television performance. They were actively witnessing a terrified human being desperately fighting for her absolute psychological survival. The absolute second she leaned into the microphone and delivered the very first spoken word lines of her intensely personal song, a massive, unprecedented shift occurred within the chaotic auditorium. The heavy, highly manufactured atmosphere of the corporate reality television show instantly evaporated, completely replaced by a stunned, absolute, and deeply profound silence. She did not attempt to hit massive, operatic high notes or deliver a heavily choreographed, highly energetic pop routine. Instead, she fiercely locked eyes with the audience and practically bled her agonizing truth directly onto the stage. As she rapidly delivered her devastatingly literal lyrics about the deep, lingering scars of severe cyberbullying, her trembling voice transformed into a powerful, undeniable weapon of radical empathy. The judges, who are traditionally completely immune to standard television gimmicks, were visibly, physically moved by the brutal, uncompromising honesty of her terrifying confession. She completely shattered the heavily manipulated reality television formula by entirely refusing to play the familiar, highly profitable role of the standard commercial entertainer. For those brief, highly charged minutes, the entire world stopped to actively listen to the incredibly quiet girl from the back of the classroom. She had successfully taken the very absolute darkest, most terrifying moments of her entire life and brilliantly alchemized them into a breathtakingly raw, undeniable masterpiece that completely paralyzed the massive, notoriously cynical entertainment machine, leaving an indelible mark on television history. The climax of this incredible television event remains one of the most deeply emotional, heavily watched moments in the entire history of modern reality television. When guest judge and legendary country music icon Brad Paisley slammed his hand down on the coveted golden buzzer, the massive auditorium completely erupted into an absolute, deafening frenzy of applause and falling golden confetti. That highly symbolic, incredibly dramatic television gesture was supposed to represent the ultimate, glorious arrival of a brand new mainstream superstar. In that incredibly specific, highly emotional moment, it genuinely felt like the entire universe was finally, loudly validating the quiet, agonizing pain she had carried entirely by herself for so many long years. The golden confetti raining down on her violently trembling shoulders was the absolute, undeniable visual proof that her deep vulnerability was not a massive weakness, but rather her most incredibly powerful, highly valuable asset. However, while the massive television network aggressively framed this triumphant moment as a beautiful, perfect fairy tale ending, it was actually the terrifying, highly complicated beginning of a much darker, incredibly treacherous battle. The massive golden buzzer did not magically erase her severe social anxiety, nor did it completely protect her from the highly predatory, deeply manipulative forces that were rapidly circling her newly found, highly profitable global fame. She had successfully conquered the television stage, but she was now forced to navigate a ruthless corporate industry. In the highly chaotic, deeply overwhelming aftermath of her massive television exposure, the harsh, unforgiving realities of the corporate music industry quickly began to ruthlessly close in around her. The traditional, heavily guarded entertainment machine is entirely designed to aggressively consume raw, authentic viral talent, heavily sanitize their unique, gritty edges, and violently force them into highly predictable, massively profitable commercial molds. Record executives undoubtedly viewed her deeply personal, spoken-word trauma merely as a highly effective marketing gimmick that desperately needed to be heavily polished, tightly controlled, and aggressively monetized. The immense, suffocating pressure to completely abandon her raw acoustic roots, significantly alter her deeply personal lyrical style, and permanently transform into a highly manufactured, universally appealing pop product was absolutely relentless. For a young, highly sensitive artist, the glittering promise of massive corporate backing and guaranteed mainstream radio exposure is an incredibly dangerous, deeply deceptive trap. It requires an artist to willingly sign away their absolute creative freedom and completely surrender their true, authentic voice to a boardroom of heavily out-of-touch executives. This was the ultimate, absolutely critical crossroads of her entire existence. She was deeply forced to make an incredibly difficult, massive decision: completely sell her fragile soul to the highly manipulative mainstream establishment for guaranteed fame, or fiercely protect the raw, quiet authenticity that had initially saved her life. Demonstrating a massive, unprecedented level of professional maturity and fierce artistic integrity, she completely executed the ultimate industry rebellion. She violently rejected the toxic, creatively bankrupt corporate route, deliberately choosing to walk completely away from the highly manipulative, heavily funded mainstream establishment. Instead of allowing the massive reality television machine to dictate her future narrative, she aggressively utilized the massive global platform she had organically built to establish a highly lucrative, completely independent digital empire. By masterfully bypassing the traditional, highly gate-kept media channels, she maintained absolute, unyielding control over her own master recordings and her deeply personal artistic vision. That one specific, painfully honest song about severe middle school bullying fundamentally altered the entire trajectory of her existence, completely transforming a terrified, highly isolated outcast into a brilliant, uncompromising, and fiercely independent CEO of her own destiny. She definitively proved to the entire entertainment industry that true, lasting success in the modern digital era completely requires an artist to aggressively defend their own unique voice, even if it means fighting the very massive system that temporarily elevated them. Her incredible, highly triumphant journey is a stunning, undeniable testament to the absolute power of radical vulnerability. She bravely proved that the exact traits the world might aggressively try to bully out of you can ultimately become your greatest, most profoundly profitable superpower.